It's about who roll over and who stand firm still. How the story will be told to the generation coming. It's these kind of things to be careful with. If it's third world poverty and decimated, it's about the down spiral and how we stop it. If you build public service building a magnificent edifice, then let it be to house magnificent spirit. Imagine how magnificent the sentiment is when you acknowledge serve your people to their benefit. Oh yes, oh yes. In the same boat we, in the same boat we, yeah. Let's try to see in the same boat we in the same boat, in the same boat we, in the same boat we. Let's try to see we in the same boat we.
Greetings. In the name of the Most High, Haile Selassie the First, Jah Rastafari. Welcome to the Dieu podcast. My name is Paul Cousin, and my goal here is to bring information and vibes to hungry hearts and minds. In the age of informational saturation, an age where knowledge can be gained on virtually every subject ever known in human history. Simultaneous bombardment 24/7 of every conceivable distraction: political theater, sports, movies, bread and circus, verbal vomit podcasts. There's a cream that's being bubbled, floating on the surface, that can be scooped up at will once the vessel is receptive. A lot of the podcasts I listen to and videos that I watch, trying to gain more knowledge on the realities of the world that we live in, the times that we're living in. A lot of the presenters who are clearly courageous individuals because they're speaking what the vast majority of society doesn't want to hear. But it's like courage that's lacking a certain level of logic and depth. So here we're gonna take our time and we're gonna be traveling into the depths. A love for wisdom, philosophy. Because we know that the way that we value, or rather our value systems, are based in total illusion. We value illusions. We value that which is not real. You see, the very concept of money exists nowhere in nature outside of the confines of a programmed human mind. A human being has to be conditioned and programmed to accept monopoly money and shiny things and comforts and leisures over truth. What's truth? Truth is that what is. It can't be moved, it can't be changed. It is what it is. If it happened in the past, it's in the treasure chest of truth, secured, recorded forever. And there are truths to be known. They can be known, they can be understood. But it takes a different value system to even begin to break down the confusions of modern day monstrosity, called human mentality. We have to accept that we've been dumbed down. We have to accept that there is much we do not know. And the little bit that we know is just a stepping stone to knowing more. Your ability to reason, your ability to think things out is a gift. It's such a gift that no other creature known has that ability. A free will choice. You see, an animal operating on pure instinct doesn't have the ability to reason things out. It doesn't have free choice. It's governed by a natural impulse. It goes out with the faith that it will be provided for. And it doesn't stress. It doesn't worry. The pelican doesn't seem to be stressed out. They may be hungry right now because of the lack of food, because human beings have overfished, toxified the oceans, heated the oceans. Yeah, we did that. It's unbelievable to me how people can still look around themselves and come to a conclusion that the changes you see happening in the climate systems are just quote-unquote climate change, are just quote-unquote global warming cycles that man has no influence on. When geoengineering operations have been ongoing for more than 75 years, ramped up steadily up until what we have right now, which is constant global spraying, constant manipulation of aerosol particulates that were sprayed out of jet aircraft by radio frequency transmissions. The very sound of even the quietest areas, if you don't hear the electrocution of the magnetic grid, it means your ears are not tuned in. It means your five senses are trapped. How did that happen? You see, there's a satanic priest class, people with high knowledge of the human psyche, and it's been used as a power differential, as a way of controlling, to where you have people who argue about the most superficial scenarios that are already completely illusionary. They read history out of a textbook and took that as reality. You read science, quote unquote science. You think that science is somebody in a certain type of garments, a white lab coat, a collared shirt, a suit and tie, and they tell you they're a scientific expert, and they lay down their conclusions for you, and you accept that, and that's what you call science. Forget the scientific method. Forget the trivia method of coming to a true understanding. Forget repeatable experiments, demonstratable laws. You know, people wouldn't argue that if you throw a rock off of a high place, it's gonna quickly go down to the ground or to the water. wherever you're throwing it over. It does seem that people would even argue that gravity exists. They're so far out there that people would say, gravity, that's just a perception. It's not real. The reason that the rock falls down to the ground is because the human mind is conditioned to experience it that way. As if the human mind is anything that they even understand at all. I mean, be real with yourself. You have what you've been told. You spent no time taking in eclectic varieties of information and applied critical thought, logic, the removal of contradictions. If things don't add up, you don't even notice because you're not interested in that. You're interested in what you've been programmed to be interested in. Yep. Individual as you think you are, you have no idea how amazing the snowflake, one of a kind, grain of sand you are. A man the other day said to me, "Oh, I'm just a speck of dust. Just stardust. Floating around in the cosmos." I said, "What's more mystic than that?" I said, "You say that like as if it's something minuscule, like it ain't no big thing. The man, you're made up of atoms. You're 99.9% space. Yeah, if the particle's small enough, it would just pass through you like it's blowing in the wind. And here we are at a gas station speaking. And you don't find that amazing? You don't find the fact that you're made of protons from the sun, photons, minerals, every element, that's you? But you have identified with the person. You see, a lot of people won't even know what I mean by that. And a lot of the things I'm going to be saying on this podcast, you're going to have to do your own research and look into. I don't have the time or the ability to intricately detail everything out for you. It wouldn't even be valuable because you could hear a mountain of data and still just completely let it go from one ear out the other like a real true deadhead. And that's what the majority of the human population are, deadheads. By design. It's not your fault that that's the way it is, but it is your fault if you find out about it and don't do anything for yourself. Don't try to go through the process of gaining responsibility over your mind. It's not your fault the childhood traumas you went through. It is your fault as you become an adult, blessed with the breath of life, to continue on. Because everybody has the voice inside that speaks to you. Everyone. So at some point along your journey, you've had intersections that you come to where you can make a choice if you're going to go this way or you're going to go that way. Let's call this way the way of truth, the way of harmony, the way of freedom. And we'll call that way the way of illusion, temporary comforts, material gain, head in the sand from actual reality truth. You don't care about it because knowing about it means you have to do something about it, and doing something about it affects your ability to attain your goals of materiality. It affects the relationships that you have, that you value so much, because it's your family member or your friend for life or whatever. So you ignore the truth. You ignore the possibility of freedom. And you think that you're living in a state of freedom. This is a very, very dangerous place to be for your soul. Hence why you're in a constant state of anxiety, with momentary reprieves from it, from every conceivable distraction: alcohol, TV, Netflix, Hulu, Spotify, mainstream media, your job, your career aspirations. Yeah. Nobody likes to be the bearer of bad news, but I'm here to bust your bubble on that matter. Virtually everything that you've ever accepted as true and real, when further investigated and objectively looked into, you would find you have been holding on to completely erroneous belief systems, dogma, indoctrination. You're controlled. Your mind is controlled, not by some little weirdo, nerdy scientist with a remote control. No, totally hands off, the same way they approach business. You know that business model of letting your money make money, a self-perpetuating feedback loop. That's how they got you. Will you have a moment of clarity to even be able to accept that bona fide truth? Probably not. So right now I feel like I'm speaking into an echo chamber, just hearing my own voice come back at me. People think that right now the winter wonderland scenario that's happening in North America is just all winter again. What's so unusual? Well, what's unusual is that the moisture that's feeding these winter cooldowns is coming out of the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic. How is it that they would call an Arctic chill, and the moisture that creates these winter storms is coming out of the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic, while everywhere in the path of where this moisture is being migrated is drying up in flash drought? But see, people are so completely disconnected from nature that they don't even know the severity of the drought we're in. They think a little month of on and off rain can somehow repair years of dehydration. Is essentially what's been going on, because the particles being used in the geoengineering operations are desiccants. So they're drying up whatever available moisture is there. It's creating a pressure deficit, a vapor pressure deficit, where the atmosphere is constantly trying to regain equilibrium. So it's trying to get more moisture. Where's the moisture coming from? That's why everything dries up so quickly. But this won't even really sink into most people because it's too far from their normalcy bias, from their accepted belief in reality. It's the reality of your choosing. That's what you choose as your perception of reality. Yeah, is that you are the dictator of what reality is. When nothing could be further from the truth. You think that right and wrong is based on what you think right and wrong should be, not what's actually right and wrong within the principles of natural law. You have identified with the dead entity person that was given to you in exchange for the real you upon entry into this plantation we call Mother Earth. You don't think it's a plantation? You don't think we live in a planetary asylum? Why? Because you're doing what you want to do. You're doing your thing. You don't even know the possibilities. You don't even know an inkling of your potential. You're the walking dead. But you'll have no problem trying your best to portray that you're a living soul, when anybody with eyes to see and ears to hear can hear and see that you are amongst the living dead. And the great work of enlightened ones is to resurrect the dead. A difficult and arduous journey. This one is. So, you're stressed out under a constant state of stress, constant anxiety. Or you feel nothing and you've taken on the attributes of a psychopath. You don't care. You don't give a F. You've become a monster. You know the definition of a monster is a human being with certain attributes. Where does the mythology of the monster come from? Where does the concept of God that you hold so dearly as truth come from? Are you willing to accept that everything you've ever been told is a lie? Are you willing to go down that road? Yeah. To reevaluate everything from the very beginning, as in from the moment of your conception, through the 9 months of your gestation, to your entry as a living, breathing soul into the cosmos, onto this ball spinning around in the harsh environment of space. Spinning. Everything around you always moving. The music of creation always playing. Yet you need to put on headphones or blast some music or turn up the volume on your phone to hear the voice on the other side. You have to imagine what the voice of Jah sounds like. You don't know the voice of God. You have too much mental chatter. You spent no time sitting down quietly within yourself, assessing. Well, not everyone is like that. You have a chance to correct your behavior by first changing the way that you think. Because the way that you think Is it really just a natural progression into that? Or has social engineering been so perfected that your very thought process was molded to suit the gains of some very knowledgeable fellows? Yeah, men and women who know the intricacies of how the human psyche functions from the earliest of days. So it all starts with your birth. Where were you born? And I don't necessarily mean where, like geographically on the earth you were born. I mean, what were the conditions like where you were born? Were you born in an ambulance? Were you born in a hospital bed? Were you born at home? Were you born in a field somewhere, under a tree? It doesn't really matter. Because even people who are born under the most chilled out conditions are still born to parents who've accepted a state of slavery for themselves and for everyone else on earth. Because subconsciously, if you've accepted that you're a slave, that means that your default modality on how you function in creation is as a slave. The thing is, in nature, slavery doesn't exist. Willing servitude is what you find in nature. The constant giving and the constant receiving of life force energy. I know a man that told me that the inheritance that he gained from his grandfather's material accomplishments, the very money that he survives on, right? Because in his mind, I know he doesn't actually survive on that, but in his mind, that's what he's using to survive. That's what he's using to feed his children and help his children to survive, his child. You know that he told me that money, he watches that money as his life force energy. Sorry, as his grandfather, and then through his mother, who's since passed away, that the money that he has access to is, he looks at it as his mother's life force energy. Can you imagine that? That might not seem odd to you, but to me, I was completely blown away by this adult human being telling me that, pretending to the world that everything's all right, that he's okay. And it made me realize that even though he articulated that, and I hadn't heard that from anyone before, that the majority of the people I know live in that exact same mentality. That you need money to survive. That money has life force energy. That the things you buy and accumulate in this physical dominion, you ever think that maybe that was the test to see if you would get trapped in that again as a soul entering, being breathed into your lungs the breath of life upon the day of your birth into this realm? You ever think that maybe all of that was a test to see what you would hold on to. Your mother delivered you into slavery. You might have an emotional block that prevents you from understanding that reality, but that is what happened. Your mother and father were both delivered into slavery. Yet you look at slavery like something that history portrays to you. For example, the transatlantic slave trade. Well, that's slavery. So my living condition isn't that, so I'm not living in slavery. Well, you're living on an illusion. And you are the best kind of slave because you don't even know that you're a slave. You think that you can give off your responsibilities to someone else. You think that you can do things because someone told you you can. And you think that you can tell somebody else to do something, that you have the right to give them a right that's a wrong. It never was right. It was never correct. It was never okay. Yet somebody pays you to do it. So now you think that you can remove the moral culpability of your actions. Impossible. It's even impossible for you to be an actual slave, because in creation slavery doesn't exist. It only exists in the confines of the human mind, of the damaged human mind. So these occultists, these people with hidden knowledge, and when I say occultist, let me be more specific. I'll speak of dark occultism, because the knowledge in and of itself isn't inherently evil. It's just knowledge. The same knowledge that dark occultists wield as a weapon can be used to not only fight, but to completely and utterly squash the opponents of freedom. We have a chance here in creation now to actualize heaven on earth. You have a chance now to give your life in order to achieve everlasting life. Are you willing? Are you capable? All it takes is the accumulation of knowledge and the processing of that knowledge into understanding, and then bringing wisdom to the ground. It's a simple process. Difficult? Well, that would take you having to say I was wrong about something. Something that you hold so dearly. Because from a very early age, you were taught that this is how the world is, and you have it right, and the rest of the world has it wrong. Well, I'm here to tell you that even those who think that they know what really going on need to broaden the scope of their research. Because if a man like Mark Passio can come on and literally lay out a tapestry of information that can bring somebody high up the mountain of enlightenment, a man like Mark Passio that must have done how many hours of research can talk at length about the events of World War II and the occult magic that happens behind the scenes, the social engineering, the mind control techniques. How is it that a man like that, who has researched so much even into the subject solely, I'm just going to speak on World War II alone, and speaks nothing of Ethiopia, speaks nothing of His Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I? That to me is amazing. because it shows me the reality of who he is. And when I say who he is, I'm speaking of His Majesty Haile Selassie I. He tells me, when I hear researcher after researcher speak at length on very serious topics with a very in-depth understanding, yet their understanding falls short because it's missing crucial data. It's missing the final link. Again, I feel like I'm speaking into an echo chamber because you have a lot of these reggae-farians around the place, you know. Yeah, man that quick to chant off the name of the king. Man who have all the talk. I just had a man today telling me all kind of the I this, the I that, protocols and the I this, and it's just total verbal vomit. No understanding about the intricacies of life. Nothing. A total deadhead. Yet has the talk, can fool the common person. Can fool the common Rasta man. So you got a heap of blind leading the blind. You know, when I first came into this trad, when my life took a drastic turn, I was on a trajectory. And then I was given a choice, and I chose the red pill, so to say. And then even after taking the red pill, I still went in and ended up taking the blue pill again at a certain time because psychologically I had been broken. When I was 19 years old, it was my first year in college. I was at the University of North Carolina at Wilmington. I had never left the island of St. Croix for any length of time before that. That was my first time, quote unquote, living somewhere else. And towards the end of that year, I got a couple of ounces of weed from somebody, and I was, the plan was to sell it and make a little money and whatever. And it didn't end up working out that way. I ended up smoking the whole 2 ounces while watching a Sublime documentary on Bradley Knowles and a Bob Marley documentary called Rebel Music. Over and over and over on repeat, I had those two going on. And within a few weeks, after not sleeping, not eating, just smoking herb and watching these documentaries, I completely detached myself from what was then the current reality, which I found out now was an illusion that I was detaching from and entering into reality. Does that mean that I had it all together? Hell no. You ain't here, I didn't sleep in 3 weeks, dude. My mind was gone. I was in a whole different state of consciousness. I was more tripped out than the man them who were eating mushrooms. I wasn't even eating mushrooms. I knew guys who were eating like on a steady trip. Couple of them man went like to where they never catch themselves again. And I was so farther out there than them Monday. And in that time span, I started saying Rastafari loud, like real loud. I started telling the people around me, yo, we ain't free, you know. But I had a bunch of privileged people telling me I'm free. Listen, I was in an auditorium. It was not an auditorium, but a cafeteria, a big university cafeteria, huge. Hundreds of people fit in this thing at once. I don't know how many hundreds, several hundreds. And so I'm telling my peer, yo, this is my buddy, what was his name? I want to say his name was Vaughn. No, his last name was Vaughn, you know, that's funny actually. But yeah. What was dude's name, man? I can't remember at the moment. But I'm telling partner, like, yo, you ain't free. I don't even know what I'm talking about, at that time. Really, I didn't know what I was talking about. I don't know what I was intuitively sensing. I didn't know. I was just going on a vibe. Because I went through the process of completely letting go. I entered into a state of vulnerability, of the unknown. Because that's how my spirit is built. That's how I'm actually built. Endless courage. Game. Beyond gameness. Not game to go out and do some foolish, stupid shit, which I have. I don't mean that kind of game. I mean game to enter in to the storehouse of truth. I took the choice to kill the dead entity person that I had identified with. Up until that point, it was a process of decaying that, deprogramming what had been programmed into me from the day of my birth. Really, I'm going to start saying the day of my conception, the moment of my conception. Because if you understand where you come from in terms of your sperm, how sperm is generated in the male, and you can look at pictures of individual sperm under high density magnification, microscope. When that sperm unites with the egg, there is a energy, a convergent energy, a harmonious convergent energy that happens. At that moment of conception, a synapse is shot out. A trajectory is began. A momentum towards something has started. There's no going back from that. It's happened. It's in the storehouse of truth. So I said Rastafari real loud. And I didn't stop. And the next thing I know, I'm strapped to a hospital bed with my mom speaking to some dude in a white coat, telling her some textbook pharmaceutical industry constructed paradigm talk. I overhear my brother saying after he got done talking to me, I hear him in there. I know he's in there somewhere. I hear him in there. And so my family was cool. My brother and my mom were cool with me being strapped to a hospital bed. And when I mean strapped, I mean like handcuffed to it. You know what I'm saying? Like, there isn't no like, let me just shift my hand to be able to unstrap my hand or nothing like I'm locked in. Calm, I mean kicking up nothing. I ain't throwing nothing around. My voice might get loud, but I'm not throwing anything around. I'm not threatening anybody with no violence. Yet, I'm strapped to this bed with this quote-unquote doctor trying to explain to my family what's happening. So the decision is made, and I'm put into a van. The inside of this van is a stainless steel cage, right? And I'm brought to a facility called Cherry Hospital. I don't know if it exists still or not. Hopefully it's been bulldozed. But either way, I'm brought to Cherry, quote unquote, hospital, or Cherry mental, medical, whatever. Cherry's Psychiatric Center. And they give me some paperwork to sign in on entry. And I'm writing on it, like, place of birth, Ethiopia, name, Rastafari. I know nothing of the King of Kings at this point, you know. Compared to what I know now, I knew nothing. Name alone, that's all I knew. So I go through the intake procedures and I go up onto the floor where I'm going to be monitored or evaluated. And the first times for medication come around pretty soon after my arrival. So they already got my name, they already got my dosage there, everything ready for me to take it. And the woman hands it to me, and I throw it over my shoulder. She like, no. So she creates another dose again, and she hands it to me. And I watch her straight in the eye, and I throw it over my shoulder again. And she's like, oh, no. You're going to have to take it. And I said, I'm not taking any of it. So 2 guys grabbed me, right? 2 big dudes. Like big man. Like 6 feet and change, weighing in. Like some high school linebackers who never could quite get anywhere in life. So they decided that they were going to become Nazis. Yeah, they were going to become guys who grab up physically weak people and make them do things against their will. This is what these men decided to do with their lives. This is the mindset of these people who think they're doing something good for humanity. Yeah. Anyway, they grabbed me and they forcibly inject me with what I found out later was most likely something called Thorazine. I found out later too that Thorazine comes from medications that used to kill parasites in pig guts. It would make the parasites them go to sleep. So demons decided that this is what was going to be used as a foundational antipsychotic type thing to just tranquilize and cool out people who were not complying easily. People who definitely needed help. I definitely needed help. I won't argue that. But I wasn't given any help. What I was given was essentially torture. I was experimented on. I was given dosages of who knows what, and told that I had bipolar, and that what I experienced was a marijuana-induced psychotic episode. Yeah, it had nothing to do with the fact that I hadn't slept for 3 weeks. You know, had nothing to do with the fact that I was eating garbage, poison food, if any at all. You know? You ever do any research into sleep deprivation on the human mind? What that can do? You ain't here is 2-3 weeks with no sleep. Not a little hour shut eye, nothing. Running straight through. That had nothing to do. It was just the THC. The pharmaceutical industrial complex. The medical industrial complex. The psychiatric industrial complex. You know that there is a diagnosis manual. I forget the official formal name of it, but it's essentially the diagnostic manual that every psychiatrist and psychologist has in their possession. I don't know if it's every year, twice a year, once every 2 years, or however often they let out a new volume that's larger than the one previous, with more new conditions, with a list of symptoms that are, need medicine. What a great business formula, right? You tell somebody at 19 years old, yo, you have a condition called bipolar. You'll have it for the rest of your life, and the only way to deal with it is to take medication. You have a family who's scared, looking for some type of assurance, so they take the word of indoctrinated house slaves, whores for Babylon, because they claim authority. They claim to have the authority to be able to tell you what is and what isn't. You could imagine that. My mom, grown woman, My brother, a few years older than me at the time, scared because they're seeing me in a way they've never seen me before. Essentially, they lost me then. And they've never gotten that me back. What they've gotten is a resurrecting dead entity coming in to life. So I tell that little anecdotal piece of experience to just let the audience know that I've been through it. To say the least. My intention with this podcast is not to intimidate or harass or make anybody feel uncomfortable. Although I know the information and the way that I put it across will make you feel uncomfortable. You can just turn it off at any time, 3 years ago, I was given the opportunity to gain access to farmland. In an area of St. Croix that most would not want to farm. They would think that farming can't even happen. I mean, right down the hill from me, there's a man who's been farming for quite a number of years. And what he does is amazing. And very few people even know what he's doing. Anyway, I gained access to a large area, couple 100 acres is the full scope of the property. And, so I wanted to go about it as I had already been studying some regenerative farming practices with restoring landscapes while farming, with the incorporation of livestock. And it was not something I naturally would have gone into because I don't eat animals. And I had, issues in my own belief systems on the keeping of livestock. I don't eat meat, I don't eat chicken, I don't eat eggs. Yet there was a time within the last couple of years that we had over 1,800 chickens. And that experience taught me that the process of trial and error for the human being can be very torturous for animals. And there's a way to use animals. You see that? Use animals. How about work with animals to create a mutually beneficial ecosystem? You see, just because of the way that we were programmed, we assume that we have the right to do whatever we want to whatever creature, including human beings, we want to, up until a certain point. And then it becomes animal cruelty. But the definition of animal cruelty to one person is entirely different from another person. Well, what's going on there? Who's right and who's wrong? Well, we've been conditioned in this new age lead up that's kind of been blended with the mass religions, the big religions of the world that come with dogma and tradition and culture that once indoctrinated into become very difficult to come out of. It requires a lot of suffering to elevate out of a dead mind state. What do I mean by a dead mind state? I mean lack of consciousness. I mean physical and spiritual awareness being completely severed from each other. The sinking of man into the confines of material existence. No knowledge of the eternal self. No knowledge of objective morality. No knowledge of truth. An ideology known as solipsism is what creates somebody's mentality that thinks that there's no such thing as truth. That truth is just up to the perceiver. And that two people that agree on something, or two or more, affirms to one and the other that what they think is true. And what they think is true, when it's likely not. So whether you're one of these false Christians or false Muslims or false Jews, false yogis, false Rastas, false anarchists, false atheists, false truther, yeah, I come to find that even the people who are claiming to tell the truth, they're not really telling the truth. They're telling an aspect of truth along their road of get into a place of peace within. This is what the human soul is ultimately seeking. And this is what the adversaries of the human soul are actively trying to suppress. And they're doing a very good job at it. They're not just trying, they are accomplishing and have been accomplishing this aim for a time frame long enough that anything before it doesn't really matter at the moment. They're at the end of their long string of control. And this is what it looks like. And see, people don't really want to change until they're forced to. They won't change until they're forced to. They don't even not want to change until they're forced to. It's not like when they become forced to, they automatically want to change. Change becomes a must. There's no way around it. There's only adapt. And this is what we do. We go day to day, right? Confined to someone else's perception of time, somebody else's value systems. Do you know where you got your value systems from? Have you ever asked yourself that? Like, where do I get this from? This behavior that I just express. Where did I get this from? Is this okay? Is this actually progressing the human species? Is this helping me to understand myself better? Or is it just clothes and fashion and trendy person that's saying something out of the box? That seems to be the trend right now, is people on the world stage with a lot of notoriety speaking out. They're speaking out, they're expressing live on camera and into recorder device. They're expressing their emancipation. But it's in sound bites and segments. So people are at the whims of memes. You know, a little sound bite that resonates with something inside you that you say is true, even if it's not. And it's likely not. Oh man, you too heavy with it, man. That's depressing. Well, when you see what's going on in the world, and you come to the understanding that the only way that you're going to be able to effectuate change is if you fix what's broken inside of you first. Then you find out that as you fix what's broken inside of you, that's the only realistic work that counted. That was how you effectuate change in the collective reality. But 99% of people don't want reality to change. They want aspects of the current reality, the collective reality, to change. But as soon as it gets to the point where they have to do the internal shadow work and actually go through some times being depressed, being lost, not knowing, like it's not okay to not know, like you gotta know everything. And when you get to a point there where you have to face yourself in the mirror, forget about it. Keep it moving. Back into the hamster wheel. I'm scared of the dark. It's a primal fear to be scared of the dark. From ancient, it's been encoded into our DNA. So that's why children are scared of the dark. How is it that naturally they just are? Because it's not safe. In their subliminal remember, it's not safe to be out here alone in the dark. And they're right. But you get conditioned to not even, to only see in the dark as darkness, as lack of light in the actual physical dominion. That when you open your eyes, if you see the light, then it's daytime. If you don't, then it's dark. Well, what about if you're in the dark on crucial information on how reality works? How you bring your reality to existence. You create your experience. Aspiring to the illusion of economic freedom through the gaining of material. Can you imagine that? Just think about the words of it. You're gonna free yourself economically, right? By upping your economic status, you will be free from it. How does that make any logical sense? Wouldn't it make more sense logically if you were free economically or experiencing economic freedom, that you would be free from economics? Because basically when you say economic freedom, you're speaking about that you have money, lots of money. You can do whatever you want because you have access. Yet if it goes away, your freedom goes away. Or if it's gained, you're now somehow free from it. Say you have $1 billion in the bank. Say you have 20 billion in the bank. Right? They'd say you can't even spend that money in a lifetime. Well, what would you do with it? The point is, we have to be careful with the words. We have to reassess these words that we use. Because that's the very mechanism that keeps us trapped in this self-reinforcing feedback loop. We don't want to know anything about the SAI, stratospheric aerosol injections, dispersions being sprayed out of jet aircraft. They call it the SAI as a plan and a procedure of what they might have to do one day. You don't even hear about tropospheric aerosol injections, because that's what it seems more like what they're doing right now. The planes seem so low spraying that they can't even be in the stratosphere. Yet even those who acknowledge that, it's like the full scope and weight of the information can't really get a chance to sink in. Because once you become aware to the point where you have to speak up about the atrocities that you see happening, you also simultaneously realize that if you do that, you will lose what you call your place in social status. As if that somehow matters to the universal judgment. to the judgment of God, to the reconciling of paradoxes within your consciousness. The laws of nature don't care about your individual emotional situation. It doesn't matter. You see, the point is that if you don't know that you're being threatened, can you be blamed for the outcome when the threat materializes? If you're not aware that a nuke gets launched and hits right down the road from you, the fact that you didn't know, you think that's going to stop you from getting incinerated? If you're downstream from it, you think it's going to stop you from getting cancer from the radioactive fallout? No. You see, we have to know what's happening to be able to gain any type of peace of mind, of quietude of mind, to be able to assess the larger aspects of creation. Most souls are not even to the point. Right now, the human soul has been degraded so much that majority are, it feels like light years away from being able to actually comprehend the trueness of it and to actually be able to experience heaven on earth, the good feeling. You can be free of mind, you can be free in your heart, but physically on the earth, if you're living here, you're a slave. And that's even for the ones that would be considered the slave masters. Yeah. They've been able to do what they've done covertly. And now they're coming out overtly, letting you know, yeah, we calling the population. We seeking to fully control every aspect of Earth's resources, including you, because you are a resource. If you have a birth certificate, even if you don't have a birth certificate, but you're still in a certain mindset, you're locked in. It's amazing how many people who consider themselves to have been unplugged from the matrix, so to say. They may have unplugged like a little wire or something, but they're still attached to the umbilical cord of the system. You willing to cut that? Probably not. That's why the human race has been able to paint itself into the dark corner that it is. You see, me personally, I got a dread stance when it comes to these matters. You know, I used to pray for certain things for people, you know, even if I didn't know the person. For example, let me tell you a little story. So I'm at the Department of Agriculture a day, and I'm in the office settling something. And while I was in there, something happened up the road. So when I drove out, I met at the entrance what I thought was just a car accident, right? Cars crashed, woman running out, head bleeding, man kind of slumped over, had hit another car, a woman I know, a farmer, her whole truck mashed up, her water barrel that was in the back spilt all over the place. And the young man in the driver's seat, he was slumping. So I didn't see anybody had called anybody yet. So I called up 911. As in, this thing had just happened. I didn't hear anything, nothing. It must have happened while I was in there in the office speaking with the woman on the AC. Didn't hear anything. Come out the driveway of the place, the entrance coming out of the exit, which is also the entrance. Anyway, I see this scene, and once I realized that there's nothing more I can do, there's enough people around, medical assistance is on its way. I just get in my truck and I head down the road. And when I get about a half a mile or a mile down the road, I notice detective vehicles and federal vehicles shooting up the road. These blacked out SUVs, right? And I'm like, I wonder what that about. You know what I mean? Can't be for that car accident. I didn't really think too much into it, but I kept going down the road and I was thinking about the young man who was slumped over his steering wheel. And I was thinking, man, wonder if he's going to be all right. And, I remember getting to the point where I was getting into a prayer. And I said, my internal dialogue prevented me from praying for this young man's physical well-being. All I could say was, Jah, your kingdom come and your will be done, as earth as in heaven. I found out later that it was a big thing and the youth man had actually been shot, and he made it just a few yards down the road before crashing his vehicle into the wall for the entrance of the Department of Agriculture. Why? Well, there were stories, I didn't really make a judgment on anything. I just know that every action has a reaction. Every action has a consequence. The consequences often blind people to the root causal factor of what caused whatever situation to happen. You see, instead of actually taking the time to breathe deeply and focus and courageously look at a situation, people piece things together haphazardly without the presence of logic. They don't allow themselves to intake an eclectic enough variety of information and then have the courage to use the mental faculties of reason to deduce and to pick through the information and find the commonalities and piece together a picture of the wider horizon of reality. People who speak about weather modification, people who are exposed in the geoengineering operations. It's very rare that you come across somebody who's speaking about the winter engineered aspect of it. The engineering of winter weather. The patented processes of chemical ice nucleation for weather modification purposes. Did I say that too fast? Patented processes of chemical ice nucleation for weather modification purposes. These processes involve the use of highly toxic elements that are poisonous to everything living. Every aspect of the concoction they use to cause this endothermic reaction to occur, where cloud moisture freezes way above freezing temperatures, above 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Depending on how much they spray, the concoction, what the agenda is, what they're trying to do, what they're trying not to do, all kinds of wild things can happen. You got snow that just caves in infrastructure because it's so heavy, freezes up everything, like what you had in Texas. You know that when that event happened in Texas a couple years ago, at the same time that engineered winter event was happening. It was 30 degrees warmer in the Arctic Circle at that time. It was 85 degrees on the same latitude in Florida. Yet people took this as a sign of we're entering a new ice age, that the earth is actually cooling, it's not warming. Or it's warming, but it's not warming like outside of just a natural cycle. It's, the level of confusion and the level of extreme retardedness that I hear from people, it's baffling. So if you came across a body that had been burnt, stabbed up, shot, run over, and you claim that that person died of natural causes, that's exactly what's going on with people thinking that human beings haven't affected the energy balance of the planet, that we haven't mashed up the climate systems, with the main largest damaging and destructive force being global geoengineering operations. Anybody in St. Croix remember 15, 20 years ago the amount of sugar birds you used to see? The yellow breast, the banana quit, the state bird of the U.S. Virgin Islands. You remember the amount of them that used to sound off in the morning? The amount of them you would see in sugar bird and hummingbird feeders? You know? Now on the rare occurrence that I see one, I just think to myself like, man, you are like an ominous sign of how destructive human beings have been. We have completely decimated your ecosystem. And we think that we're going to survive long on that. We fill up landfills, which start with filling up our trash cans. And we just go about daily life like that's normal. And it's out of sight, out of mind. And the rare occurrence that is in sight, you have a couple thoughts and then it's out of sight, it's out of mind again. Mountains of trash seeping into aquifers, leaking into the oceans. Industry, pollution, toxic waste dumps all over the planet, nuclear explosions all over the planet. For decades upon decades, 2,400 nuclear detonations on Earth and in the atmosphere. Up to date. The human race sounds sane to you? I mean, because really and truly, we've gone along with this. All of these things that I'm talking about, whether you participated directly in these programs or in these agendas or in these situations at all, or not, doesn't matter. If you haven't said no to it, then you're complying with it. Because to say nothing is to say yes. To not say no is to say yes. To say no is the beginning. And yeah, you can say no to anything. You have that right. Does that mean you won't face consequences? No. I won't say that. But there's meaning behind the scripture. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake. Even if you're not promised a happy ending. On the contrary, even if you know you're actually promised a rocky road for choosing the right thing to do, you do the right thing. and the outcome's sweet. The road might be rough, but the outcome's sweet. But if you've been completely disconnected from your spirit, from your spiritual nature, then that doesn't even ring as anything of value to you. If this is where you are, I'm sad for you. And I pray that you get through. Because I know subconsciously you yearn for freedom. Freedom of expression. Freedom of choice. But you think freedom of choice is keeping or aborting your baby, voting Democrat or Republican, going to this resort or that resort, buying these shoes or those shoes, buying this shirt or that shirt, eating this food or that food. You think that that's freedom of choice. That's an illusion. Because whether you choose the organic food or you choose the commercial food, you're still eating nanoparticles of aluminum, barium, and strontium, polymer fibers, ubiquitous in the environment from the fallout of geoengineering operations. Certified organic, not even if it's certified organic, even if it's just straight regeneratively grown with the highest principles of how to farm nutritious food in place, guess what? You're still eating nanoparticles of aluminum, barium, and strontium, polymer fibers, graphene, surfactants, and everything else that's not even known, hasn't been tested and shown. So what's this stuff doing in the air column? So while you're eating it, you're also breathing it in. And when you're not eating it, you're still breathing it in. But you don't know that you're breathing in. You don't even want to know that you're breathing it in. Because no, man. This is what's happening subconsciously in you. You take that information as if it's some passing meme on Instagram. If it's some little soundbite segment on Facebook, YouTube, the mainstream media. Little sound bites, little pieces. No wider view of reality, no long view of history. No idea on how we've gotten to where we are. You have no idea where you are, when you are, who you are, what you are. None of it. You identify with pure ego. You know what that means? You know what the ego is? The ego is the identifier here on earth to give you a knowledge that you are an individual. Without the ego, you would just be a loose set of atoms. You wouldn't be anything constructed and structured. This is what the ego's place is. That's all it is. It's not something that's supposed to be calcified. It's not supposed to be something that's supposed to be your identification. But see, you were given this name, and that name was typed out in big letters onto a birth certificate. And you were viewed as property. The bill of sale. Your mother delivered you. She is an asset. You have now become an asset to those who would seek to dominate the planet, who seek total control. And that is their very downfall. It's never enough. They don't even want full control with you not knowing. They want full control and you know they're in full control. That's what they want. Psychopaths. That's what they are. Clinically insane. a mentality that you can't even conceive because you have semblance of feelings. You have the ability to feel, even though you choose not to or choose to ignore it. These don't have that option. They are incapable of feeling empathy. They are incapable of feeling anything. They are incapable of understanding the consequences to their actions, even to themselves. This is who you are up against. If you don't know that, how could you possibly have a chance to live in freedom? You can't. And furthermore, your children can't. And if you were to have grandchildren, they can't either. But based on the current mathematical and statistical trajectory, you're right if you think that you're old and it doesn't matter. You're right. You're right. How about that? At this point right now, it truly doesn't matter to you. Planetary omnicide. Total human extinction first, and then planetary omnicide soon after. That's the legacy you want on your soul? That you did nothing to avert that? Even if you don't, even if we don't avert it, even if our collective effort does not manifest, does that mean you don't try? Is that what you want to be? When you take your last breath, you had just given up, kicked your feet up, in a war that men and women have died for millennia, to give us the chance to now fight for our life. And indeed, that's what this fight really is. It's about the life, about life, not just your life, all living creatures, all living beings, all living energies. You see, the vibratory energy will never stop. It has never stopped. It doesn't stop. Everything is moving. Everything in the universe is moving. Everything around you that you think is an inanimate object, it's vibrating at a frequency. You are made of the same atomic structure. What differentiates you from a wall or from a bear or from a pelican or from a table or from a microphone? Frequency, assortment. That's it. The universe speaks to you in a whisper. Truth isn't loud and obnoxious. It doesn't need to be. It's the truth. Nothing to prove. Just something to be discovered. Added to. You know? Pieces of a puzzle. So, in my mind, I grapple sometimes with who my intended audience is. My intended audience is anyone. Literally anyone who's looking to wake up out of the sleeping slumber, to awaken the sleeping giant that is the dormant human genome. Because at this point in my life now, I've come to an understanding of enough of the wider horizon that I know that the only hope is in adding to the cause of freedom, to the voice of truth. Does that mean I won't fumble and make mistakes? No. I will. But you won't be able to legitimately argue and debase the scientific information that gets presented. For example, ionosphere heaters. This is technology that cooks the atmosphere. Essentially, that's what it's doing. Microwaving the atmosphere, the higher helps of the atmosphere, the ionosphere. This technology can be used to do pretty amazing things. Change upper level wind currents, change convection, change ocean currents over time, maneuver storms, cause droughts, block moisture. Basically, they manipulate atmospheric aerosol particles. Debase that one. Do the research. Prove me wrong that those aren't being used all day, every day, all night, every night, right here on planet Earth. Conclusively show me that they're not doing anything to you harmful. No effects whatsoever. Not contributing to your agitation, to your insomnia, to your physical ailments. Prove to me that these aren't weapons of mass destruction. Prove to me that they're benevolent in any way. You can't. You won't. But you should try. Because in doing so, you would prove to yourself the truth. Prove to me that geoengineering operations aren't ongoing and haven't been ongoing since the years following World War II. Prove to me that it's not a satanic cult that really runs the earth right now. In terms of the paradigm within the confines of majority population's headspace. Do they really run it? No. They don't run it. They use you to get their agenda done. They don't do the work themselves. You're talking about people who material wealth range in the trillions, multi-trillions in intrinsic valued resources. Just know the playing field is about to get leveled. Because pretty soon, nothing's gonna matter except your daily bread, enough water to drink, and shelter for anybody on the planet. Not just the people in third world countries who've been experiencing these type of things all the while, but for all 8 billion or whoever's left. That's what's going on. Are you ready for that mentally? Are you mentally prepared for this? Because it's not something that can be avoided at this point, you know. What I'm not 100% sure is going to happen is complete human extinction, complete planetary omnicide. I won't know that until that day comes. But does that mean that that's not where we're heading on the current trajectory? No, it doesn't mean that. We are heading there with certainty. That is where we are going. If we do not have an entire course correction, if we do not reevaluate, reassess, and redirect, what does that type of course correction look like on the ground for you? Can you begin the process of letting go? Can you begin the process of saying I was wrong about my belief systems? I was ramping on the earth with a poisoned worldview, thinking that I had it right. laughing at the people I thought had it wrong. You just laughing at yourself, man. You see, most people would take a change in position any day. They would like to be in the position of dominance. They would like to be up there with the occult priest class, the dark occult satanic priest class. That's where you would choose to be, in total control. You would rather rule in hell than serve in heaven. Admit it to yourself. You would take the opportunity to become that dominating force. In your little mini satanic mindset, in your little secondary psychopathic tendencies. But you wouldn't hold that position because you're not built that way. But you would like to have the billions. But do you want what it has that comes with it? And I don't even necessarily mean billions. I mean even people who just have the comfort of whatever they're bringing in. And then that's what is the extent of their mentality in life. Whether you're comfortable on 20 grand a year or 200 million a year, it doesn't matter. The fact that you're comfortable because you make a certain amount is craziness. It's total insanity. It's mental illness. But oh no, that's not mental illness. Mental illness is what the diagnostic manual. You know, you don't break down these words no time. You don't look into the depths of anything. You have a hunchback from the amount of time you spend on your phone. You know, I saw a little girl today and I told my wife, I said, look at this girl, now look at her posture. Literally bent like a thumb from the mid-back down, looking like a hunchback. Because from the very first time that she was holding and looking down at a phone because that kept her quiet as a child. Think about the psychology of these children. Think about the abandonment issues they have. And then assess the abandonment issues you have. What did your parents do? Just because they didn't have a phone to hand to you, that doesn't mean they didn't abandon you. You know, I was dropped off at daycare at 2 years old. What people would say, well, that's normal. It's everybody. Well, it's not everybody, for one. And two, it's not normal. It might have been normalized, but it's not normal. A 2-year-old child, what's normal for a 2-year-old child is to be around his guardians, its parents. Does that mean that both parents need to be together? No. A child isn't instantly and permanently traumatized because the parents break up, so to say. What's the traumatizing for them is that neither one of them have grown up and matured. They feel that they don't actually have the adequate guidance to navigate this insane asylum. This world that they see unfolding in front of them, subconsciously knowing, but unable to compute it. Dropped off at 2 years old to daycare. By the time I'm 4 years old, I'm in primary school. If that's what they call it, nursery. I'm in that beginning, pre-K, pre-kindergarten, even before the pre-kindergarten. At the school I went to, I started the littlest children. I was the embryo of the school. I began their nursery program, 4 years old. So at the age of 2, from 2 till never again, I'm with others more than I'm with my parents. mommy and daddy issues. Even if you weren't dropped off like I was, even if you were kept, even if you were homeschooled, you can still feel abandonment issues. You can still experience abandonment issues because your parents were detached from reality so that they could not provide for you outside of material provisions. Maybe some level of knowledge of some type of better scenarios, ways to use your hands, ways to farm your own food. If you're lucky, you got that. And even if you got that, but you haven't worked out how some of the behaviors that you hold so dear to you as this is just how I am, this is just who I am. I learned this from my dad and I love and respect my dad, so this is the way I'm going to carry on because this is what's right. Are you able to take a step back and say perhaps I was wrong about that? And if I was wrong, to accept that I was wrong and then try to figure out what is right? Once you know the truth about a certain situation, you have the moral obligation to share it. If you don't, you're going to experience inner turmoil, straight up. I know this because I experience it. You know how long it's taken me to actually record something that I felt and said to myself, okay, you know what? No matter what I've done with this recording and re-recording and so, it's time to just get the ball rolling and see how it goes. See if I can help anyone get out of the situation of complete slumber, which is dead. You're the walking dead. You hold a certain mind space. If you're not, well, you're not. But if you are, and you pretend that you're not, well, you are. And until you make the active behavioral changes, which are initiated from changing your thought patterns, and you get a grasp on what your true feelings are, the full scope of human emotion, and you understand that you are responsible for those emotions. You are responsible for what you think. You are responsible for how you act. This is the beginning to a brighter future. This is the way to lasting peace. This is how heaven can be brought to earth forever. And we can all jump on the gravy train that is the enlightenment of the human soul in the physical. Because even if it's total human extinction and planetary omnicide, don't think for an instant that you're getting out of this thing. You're not. The only way to get out is through a process. So whether you enter into a consciousness in some other planet somewhere, or you lie dormant for 65 million years while the earth reaches a new equilibrium, or you're just floating around in the cosmos in pure consciousness. Anyhow it go, the process still has to go on. The principle remains. So in this late and dark hour, can you hold on to genuine morality? Can you hold on to doing the right thing at all times, regardless? Are you willing to go hungry? Are you willing to live without certain luxuries and comforts. I would recommend you start to wrap your head around that. Because whether you want to or not, or you're willing to or not, uncomfortable times are coming. They're already hitting huge swaths of the world's population. And that trend is continuing to grow. And it will go exponential. And pretty soon, every single one of you and every single one of everybody that you know or have ever known who's still in the land of the living, breathing, even if at the same time in the shadows of death. Because we walk through the shadows of death. People we call alive. We think we're alive, we call somebody else alive. That's just the dead calling the dead alive. Yeah. But the human being's potential is there. The genuine aspirations for good is there. But it won't come without the internal shadow work being done. It just won't happen. It'll be more of the same thing. Nothing new under the sun will come. But it's a must. It's a must that it comes. It's not a if. It's a when. And it's a how much sufferation does the human species have to endure before we get it right.
Awareness in the moment when we're together. When we're together, loving hearts and helpful gestures to reach the measure, to make things better. When we're together, we're that much stronger together. Spiritual chemical bonds that leave you never, in the soul forever, all together. The brightest heights that reach your heart, that reach thy heart, yeah. Awareness in the moment when we're together. When we're together, loving hearts and helpful gestures to reach the measure, to make things better. When we're together.